Hey everybody, it's great to see you. First, let me say thank you to Kobaka for inviting me here. You may have guessed I'm not Korean, but my children are. And so I feel a great sense of pride when I'm here and a lot of solidarity with you, so thank you very much. Also, I want to say shout out to James for an incredible presentation. I feel now maybe I should have used more cool video in my presentation, but actually, today I'm not going to really be talking much about the content on TikTok, which I think you know is very good and very compelling. But instead, I'm going to talk a little bit about the organization that we've built over the last 7 years and how that organization is designed for us to grow quickly with maximum scale and minimum resource allocation. So brief background on me. I'm based in Los Angeles. I grew up in New York and Tokyo. I've been running the partnerships organization at TikTok since before there was TikTok. So I joined after the acquisition of Musical.ly and before we launched TikTok. I run a global team of about 40 people focused on non-IP partnerships. So we don't license any content. We focus on technology and other product partnerships. Before TikTok, I worked at YouTube for 7 years on product and music integrations. As well, and then prior to that, I worked for about 20 years in the music industry. So that's my background. I'll tell you a little bit about our partnership strategy and what we have developed over the last 7 years. So first and foremost, and those of you who work at big companies, I think this will resonate with you. Many big companies struggle with lots of individual teams that are smart and motivated and trying to do their best to drive impact for the company. And yet, the most frequent question that we hear from teams, both in my current experience and previous, is my work impactful? Is the work that I'm doing really meaningful for the company? And when we seek global expansion, it's absolutely vital that every contributor to that growth is doing work that is really meaningful. And so when I founded this team 7+ years ago, I was really quite dedicated to the idea of ensuring that the work that we did was highest impact. It seems quite obvious, actually, but I think you'll see, and I'm sure you've all experienced this, that actually it's very common for people to feel disconnected from a company's success. So there's a couple elementary strategies that we've implemented to make this practical. So one is that we're a global team of generalists. So we hire from the telecommunications industry, we hire from entertainment, I come from big tech and music, and yet everyone around the globe, we have people in Vietnam and Brazil and Germany, all of them are generalists. And what this means is that we're able to execute against a broad set of categories of partnerships without allocating a ridiculous number of headcount for each thing. So I like to tell my boss, I have one person working for me in Vietnam. I will never ask for any additional headcount because she does everything. Again, this seems like a very elementary concept, but it's very elusive for large companies. Secondly, we're very focused on scalability. Again, frequently in big companies, you see someone does a one-off partnership in Australia or a one-off thing in Brazil, and they cross their fingers and I hope this is impactful. We found that simply doesn't work, and it's actually terrible for team morale. So instead, what we do is, based on input that we hear and the goals that we understand for the company, we pilot initiatives, we rigorously test those pilots, and then we expand those pilots globally. Again, this seems like a pretty elementary concept, and yet very few companies operate this way. And I'll talk a little bit about how some of the pilots that we've tested in markets like Nigeria have been brought to bear at a global level in a way that is meaningful. The last piece is that we operate as a service organization within our company. So again, in many other companies, you'll see the BD or partnerships teams will have their own goals, and they'll say like, oh, I think it would be interesting if we did X, Y, Z. But actually, we position ourselves as we are the service organization for our internal clients. So our product team, our sales organization, across the whole ByteDance family of applications, we work for them. So it's akin to like our legal team or our comms team, our PR team, right? We work as a service organization. So this is partnerships as a service. This is integral to making sure, again, that our work is actually impactful towards the goals of the company. So what are we actually talking about in terms of the categories of work that we do? Well, we divided into 3 broad pillars within my distribution partnerships team. We are flexible, however, and again, this distributed model of generalists allows us to be flexible, to provide service across a very broad set of categories of partnerships. But broadly, we do mobile partnerships with the telecommunications industry. This can take the form of transactional partnerships like preloading the TikTok app onto mobile devices, either from OEMs or telcos. Infrastructure partnerships to make it easier and cheaper and faster for TikTok videos to travel over the air. You can imagine we have servers in places like Singapore. To get from Singapore to rural Thailand is very expensive and slow. And so we partner with the likes of AIS and other Thai telcos to make that journey faster and cheaper. Similarly, video optimization, thinking about how we can transmit those videos in a way that is optimized saves hundreds of millions of dollars. But also there are more, so all that is very B2B kind of boring stuff. But there's also consumer-facing things that are maybe a little more interesting for you. So telecommunications broadly, obviously our telco partners here and around the world spend an awful lot of money trying to acquire new users. And a lot of the way that they do that these days is through creators. And creators live naturally on TikTok. And so, like for example, next week I will go to Las Vegas to join American telco T-Mobile with their F1 sponsorship, where TikTok creators will appear in droves. So there's a balance between B2B and sort of D2C initiatives. Product partnerships means anything that broadly makes our products better. So I'll talk a little bit about ticketing, I'll talk a little bit about music, but in general, as we think about how can we make TikTok a better experience for all of our users, this is the partnerships that are brought to bear there. And lastly, trust and safety. So you can imagine that trust and safety is among the most important work that we do. There's, of course, an awful lot of scrutiny on all platforms, but we have a little bit of extra scrutiny, maybe you've heard, here and in other places. And so it's particularly important that through partnerships and otherwise, that we're able to deliver a truly safe experience for our users. And that takes a lot of different forms. Partnerships are a really important piece of that. So going back to the idea of driving very real impact, we realized at a certain point, again, using the example of someone in Peru does a partnership and they pray that that partnership is high impact. We wanted to avoid that at all costs. And so what we thought was, at the very highest level, what's most important for our company? How do we ensure at the CEO level, my boss's boss, what does he really care about? And we wanted to ensure that our team was doing work to address those organizational needs specifically. So broadly, we think that there's 4 categories: growth, engagement, value, and trust. Are these partnerships driving new users? Are they driving the migration of users from monthly active users to daily active users? These are very real, tangible results. And if our partnerships are not driving those results, we shouldn't do them. We should allocate those resources differently. Engagement means how much time people spend using TikTok, whether it's on platform or out of platform. Value is incremental revenue, cost savings. Trust, obviously, is trust. It's a little harder to measure, but again, if we can't put our finger, if we can't understand exactly why our partnerships are driving these 4 metrics, we shouldn't do it. And this sort of ethos has helped us to ensure that every iota of work that we do is of the highest impact for a very big company. I have 150,000 colleagues, so it's important that my 40 people are actually driving real value. Okay, so I'll talk a little bit about partnerships. As I said, telecommunications is a huge part of our partnership landscape. I met yesterday with our mutual friends, SK Telecom, who are doing some very innovative and cool things. We also partner very closely with OEMs like Samsung and LG. Again, these partnerships take a lot of different forms. We've done 850 mobile. You may not know this, but outside of Korea, mobile data is exceptionally expensive. And so users in Nigeria, users in the UK, users in Brazil will actually use less TikTok because it's too expensive. And so we've partnered with all of these telcos over the years, not SKT because data is free here, but over the years, 800 plus times to make it easier and cheaper for TikTok users to enjoy our product. And what that means, going back to this idea of global scalability, is that when we aggregate that impact of those 800 partnerships, we can look at a global level and say that making mobile data free or cheap for our users has driven an uptick of X, I can't tell you what X is, but X% uptick for our users, which is material for our business. Again, this is this idea of like replication and scale over and over and over again, and then aggregated for massive impact for a very big company. Product partnerships, again, this takes a lot of forms. There's a lot of, you will recognize some of these names. I want to call out music here because I think it's particularly interesting. So some of you may know that music discovery, which is, I worked in the music industry for a long time, music discovery is a pointed challenge. There's, especially now, the barrier to entry on music creation is very low. AI and lots of other tools has made it easy for lots of people to make lots of music, which means that the discovery of that music is even more important. So what we learned was that TikTok users were, with their finger ready to flip, were going through videos, discovering a new song, pausing, and then moving to the Melon app, or moving to Spotify, moving to Apple Music, trying to find that thing. This is a very fractured experience. And so now we've partnered with Melon, we've partnered with Spotify, with Apple Music, to authenticate. Those users log into their accounts within TikTok, and they're able to one-click add to playlist. So this sounds very elementary, but actually it's been used almost 1 trillion times. And it dramatically impacts the retention, the value that we deliver to the music industry. And this is the category of product partnerships that we see all the time. And then again, trust and safety. We're at pains to ensure here in Korea and elsewhere that we are compliant with all local regulators, that we are doing our best to ensure that our users are safe, and partnerships are a really important part of this puzzle. I'll talk a little bit later about what some of those partnerships are. So here's some practical examples. Going back to the idea of this scalability and the idea of internal clients. We work, for example, with our sales team to drive incentives for advertisers through third-party partnerships with like Visa. And all of these should pique your interest on ways that you yourselves might partner with TikTok from a sales perspective or otherwise. There's lots of opportunities for us to pioneer new categories of partnership. CapCut, as you may know, is the most popular mobile video editing software. It's our product. And they have a premium subscription product, and we've worked with them to pioneer new modes of subscriber acquisition. Ticketing. So ticketing, much like music, is a really interesting connection between on-platform experiences and delivering off-platform value. And so Ticketmaster, dozens of other ticketing platforms around the world are brought to bear in a way that's meaningful. People discover music, they discover events, they watch sports highlights, and then they're able to transform that into real-world experiences. We think this is particularly high impact. So Telefonica is a Spain-based mobile network operator group. They operate telcos around, mostly through Latin America and Spain. This is actually a very interesting category of partnership. So Open Gateway is part of an industry trade group called GSMA, of which SKT, KT, and U+ are all members. And Open Gateway is this idea that across a consortium of over 100 telcos, that user data can be aggregated and anonymized and turned into a profit center, right? So you can imagine that like when, actually those of you who have applications, you'll know that every time someone downloads your application, you have to send them an SMS to verify that they are who they say they are. We have more than 1 billion users, so that gets pretty expensive pretty fast. So Open Gateway and the GSMA have allowed us to take that user data anonymously through API and confirm that a user is who they say they are. So for those of you with applications you want to disseminate, I highly recommend that you try out this API because you can save a lot of money on SMSs. Similarly, we're at pains to ensure that our users are not only who they say they are as old as they say they are. So we want to make sure that our users have the right experience for whatever age they might be. Along the same lines, our telco partners can help us to validate that people are the age that they say that they are. Vodafone is a telco group headquartered in the United Kingdom. As I said earlier, we are at pains to make sure that our users, particularly our younger users, are having quality and safe experiences. And so we introduced a product called Family Pairing. This is the idea that parents and children can have their accounts connected so that parents can monitor not only the content on TikTok that they're watching, but they can set things like time limits and make sure their kids aren't watching TikTok at 3 o'clock in the morning, things like that. So this is something that we pioneered with Vodafone and we scale around the world. T-Mobile is the largest mobile network operator in the US. TikTok Shop, which is not yet launched in Korea, but I suspect will be someday, is a huge and growing part of our business. We partner with T-Mobile to empower them to sell goods on TikTok Shop. And TikTok Shop is powered in many ways by our own creators who are incentivized to push that consumption. So this is a really sweet spot between, sort of through a partnership between us, our creators, and the biggest operator in the US. And then I want to highlight this local campaign, Taylor Swift, clearly not a Korean artist, but a great example of the monetization and the opportunity for us to deliver real value off-platform based on discovery that happens in-platform. So with that, I want to say thank you, and I really appreciate your time. I hope that that's been informative as you think about how to build your own international partnerships organization.